Hello, Jamal. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Very good. How are you?
I'm great. It's been a wonderful morning so far. I just got back from a walk actually. I always go on a walk right before I do an interview. It always gives me a chance to clear my head and uh it's just a wonderful way to start my day.
Yeah, absolutely. I love walks myself, but
Yeah.
I'm more of a runner. And then like you don't get to take anything in. You're out of breath. You're tired, and you're just like, I want to get
Yeah.
home. I want it to be over.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. But now it's so hot. Like it's walks most
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, I only recently started going on jogs as well, just because I'm trying to lose weight and trying to be more healthy. And as I lose my weight, then jogging starts to become part of my my routine. So yeah, it's a great way to start the day, and I'm glad that you feel the same way too.
Absolutely.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story to where you are today?
Yeah. So I'm a composer for films and games. That's pretty much all I've done in like my musical life. Um, I didn't play in any bands or anything officially. So I started in high school slash upper school, which is what we call it here in the UK. Uh, and I was just making really terrible
Uh,
tunes with the goal that I would someday write for games.
mm,
Um, and just through trial and error, effectively, I like improved my craft. And by the time I finished upper school and went to college, I was a little bit better and met some great friends there and shared information and learned together. And that's probably where I scored my first game, which was it was a clone of Flappy Bird.
oh
And
wow.
I think it was one of the first to come out after Flappy Bird got taken down. So
Mm.
it was called Floppy Bird. Music was terrible. Frankly, the game was terrible. It was just a rip off. Um, yeah, uh, and yeah, kept honing my craft through college, and then went to uni and met a bunch of friends there, and that was where things around that time just started to pick up in both games and films.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so and graduated from university, and that's where I'm at now. Like I think I graduated a couple of years ago now,
Oh wow.
so time has flown since then. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Wonderful. Why video games?
I don't I don't know. I I love them, of course. So
Right.
that would be why. But I love all sorts of things, and I love music in general. And so I always ask myself why video games, but things just aligned. I think the I knew I wanted to do music, um, but I just really had no plan of how. Well, the moment I found out I wanted to do music, it was already like, yeah, I want to do music for films and games, and I don't know how or why that came about, but I suppose when I was in that would have been around middle school or early upper school
Hmm.
kind of time. Um, and I think it probably would have been listening to Hans Zimmer and composers like that. I think Hans was my first introduction to film music.
Mm.
Even though looking back, I know that I was always aware of film music because
Yeah.
I would always run around the playground at school singing film scores. I didn't know back then, which is not what most people do, but
Right.
like I knew at that point, um, probably yeah, middle school that I wanted to do film music, but like somewhere along the line, I think I fell in love with it way before I knew that I did, and so
Mm.
things just aligned, and yeah, I get yeah, listening to Hands is my first introduction to it, and then I think when I heard Hands, I can't remember what score it was. It may actually have been Modern Warfare 2, which looking back on it now was barely even him.
Right.
But but like so that collection of people seemed to inspire me, and around that time all sorts of things were coming out like Inception, and so yeah,
Right.
massively Hands there. Uh, and that was what kicked it off for me. I think, but I always change that story because I have no idea what it was, but I think it was Hands.
Yeah. There's always so many things that we look back on and we're like, did I really get inspired by that, or was I inspired by something else? And it's hard to think back on like what it was that just made us move forward in what we love to do. It's so yeah, that's great. I was going to eventually ask you some of your inspirations are, and obviously Hans Zimmer is one of them.
Yeah, there's such a stigma with him, like, and it's almost like you don't want to say you were inspired by him because people just like hate him, and even if they love him, they kind of just there's so much surrounding him
Yeah.
that uh, so I don't listen to him even as much now, which is a shame because I do still love him and respect him, and he got me into this, and so like
Yeah.
I love him. But now, as far as film composers go, I am I love Thomas Newman,
Mhm.
Nicholas Britell, um, uh, even new people coming up like Ludwig Göransson. Uh, just yeah, love those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So you obviously write for film as well. What are some of the projects that you have worked on?
Well, as far as films go, I've done only one feature, which I hope to change. So is a there's a massive like unbalance there. So I've done a lot of games, um, and not as many films.
Hmm.
And actually, interestingly, people will hate this, but I originally got into games, which is another thing I didn't mention, because I wanted to get to films. And
Mm.
I now realize, because that would offend a lot of people who only do games, that I realize they are, in some ways, very different things. And I love both equally. And I don't
Hmm.
see game music as just a stepping stone. But when I was younger, I'll admit I did. And I thought, I don't want to do games forever or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
But now, absolutely, I couldn't give just one of them up. So
Yeah. Having worked on video games and using that in a way, not fully as a stepping stone towards film music, what are some of the things that you have found within composing for video game that you are able to then use towards film writing?
Um, well, I suppose things like just building like character development within um, game music is always like that's something you have to do all the time. So
Right.
that's a skill that you can take directly to film scoring because you have a stronger you can build up sonic identities way easier. It's just something that you just don't realize that you do it all the time,
Right.
and then you do a film and you're like, yeah, this is like something some people struggle with, but I do it all the time. So just building character themes and motifs and things. That is like part of the job always for game music, and not so much all the time for film music. So
Yeah.
definitely you can take that over.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what have been some of your favorite scores? What are some scores that have absolutely inspired you?
Oh, this question is just like we could do a whole thing on just this.
Hey.
Well, um, recently, The King. by Nicholas Britell is like just blew my mind when I heard it.
Hmm.
Absolutely blew my mind. Um, Samaros 3, which is a small game that I've tried to spark up conversations with all sorts of people about, and they don't ever seem to know what it is. But it was just a small indie game I've been playing from a company called Amanita Design,
Mm.
and the composer FloX. He's like a I think he's like a jazz artist who also dabbles in like electronic
Oh,
music,
wow.
and his combination is fantastic. So that's probably at least my favorite game score of all time.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so those two for sure, and just like hundreds of others. Like I watched Pinocchio the other day, the 2019 Italian film,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, so Dario Marianelli scored that, and just fantastic. I love him so much. I really
Yeah,
do.
I'll have to check that one out. I didn't even know that there was a new Pinocchio. That it was in Italian, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so it wasn't like it wasn't a Disney production.
Right.
It's like a standalone. They just picked up Pinocchio as an IP, and just like yeah, it's fantastic. The visuals are brilliant as well.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I always love a good Pinocchio movie. And I'm looking forward to listening to this in music because it sounds like you are an advocate for that score.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Well, what about you? Actually, what have you been listening to?
Oh, you know what? Oh my gosh. I have been listening to S- So, okay, I'm going to start with things that I've been listening to on my free time. Things that I
Right,
listen to that I am not preparing for with any upcoming episodes.
right,
Uh
yeah.
so I guess that some of the things that I've been listening to, I've been going back and re-listening to a lot of Mahler. uh, I have had a resurgence in wanting to engage in Mahler music. It's just some of the most grand music, and I have been absolutely enjoying it. I think one of my favorite pieces of all time is Mahler's Second Symphony, and it's just huge choral work in the final movement, and I absolutely love it. But I think other things, I've been trying to go and listen to a bunch of indie composers, people who I've just never even heard of before.
Mhm.
I'll go on Twitter, look up a composer that I either recently started following or has recently reached out to me and listen to their music. And I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of things that I've been finding. And I love just engaging in all sorts of music, trying to expand my horizons and
Mhm.
uh, to better appreciate a lot of music. I can definitely say that in my recent past, I've kind of limited myself very much to what I was studying in school. And I mean, that's how things go when you're so embedded into your program.
Yeah.
And even after that, for a while, I was listening to just operas and ballets and all those kinds of things, just because I work for an opera school, and so I'm
Right.
constantly trying to keep up to date with as many operas as I can, so I
Mhm.
can I can converse with my coworkers. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I've been listening to. I mean, pretty much Mahler, and then listening to pieces here and there by various songwriters, composers, and things, just so I can learn what's out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I find I rely heavily on my friends to send me new, fresh stuff that I
Yeah,
wouldn't listen to and take me out of my comfort zone. Because if it's left up to me, I will stick in the same circle and I won't move
yeah,
much. And I very rarely discover anything new.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. That's kind of how I have been in terms of film music and video game music as well. I have been somebody who doesn't necessarily really care for, or I mean, that's the wrong word to say. I haven't been somebody who has been eager to go and watch a film or to play a video game. I've always been more interested in reading a book or just putting on an album while I'm cleaning my apartment or
Hmm.
something, something a little bit more active.
Yeah,
And although reading doesn't always involve something active, but I've recently been trying to consume a whole lot more media, and films and video games are definitely some of those things that I've missed out in the past that I've been enjoying getting to learn and consume. One of my favorite things so far that I've picked up on was the video game Journey with Austin Wintory's score.
yeah, yeah.
I That's one of my favorite scores of all time in video games, and there's just nothing like it.
I know there's a reason that comes up in every list of the best game scores because it
Yeah.
was wonderful,
Yeah,
really
I
brilliant
mean,
stuff.
yeah, and it was one, I think it was the first video game score to ever win a Grammy. I think,
Oh
yeah.
right, was it? Okay, that would make
It was
sense.
I am blanking at the top of my head which award it was, but it was the first of its kind to win an award, and well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of video games do you generally like to play?
Well, I'm so slow at playing. Like, there's two types of game really. There's games that you can play with your friends that are there for like quick stimulation and just gratification
Right.
and that's the Fortnites and the Rocket Leagues and stuff. So I've been playing a lot of those, but I love single player games. They
Mhm.
happen to be the ones with the best music, best
They are.
stories, and
Oh, they are.
characters and environments. And so I've been playing a lot of uh, Dragon Age currently, but before that I was trying to get through Witcher 3, which
Mhm.
then became probably my favorite game ever. And I really didn't want it to be because everyone kept saying play it. And I was like, I just don't want to play it because you keep telling me to. Uh, and then I did, and I was like, you know what, this is one of the best games ever. And I just really didn't want it to be. But just
Yeah.
yeah, the music is fantastic. Just like again, something that when I heard, and this is what I love. Like I love listening to new things and thinking, this is my new favorite thing. That's
Yeah.
just the best feeling. Like you've discovered something. So
Yeah. Yeah, actually one of the most recent games that I've played that the score I have like gone back and listened to on repeat since I've played it was It Takes Two. I can't remember the name of the composers at the top of my head, but it's a two-player game. You can't play the game without two
right,
players,
yeah,
and because you have to interact with each other. And that score was so diverse that you never felt like you were listening to the same thing. It was every little chapter of the story had some other theme. You had a whole winter theme. You had uh, a whole thing dedicated to music. So
right,
you're going through a history of music kind of thing in within the game, which was a lot of fun, going from classical music to electronic dance music, and just in one little chapter. And that was probably one of my favorite scores so far, and one of my most recent playthroughs of a game.
that's amazing. I'll check that out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the game itself requires two people to play, but I'm pretty sure that pretty sure that album is on Spotify. And
Oh,
I
okay.
I know it's definitely on Spotify. If it's on Spotify, I'm sure that it would be on places like Apple Music or even like YouTube or wherever.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's a good score to check out.
I'll listen to that.
Yeah,
Today. I'll listen to that today.
yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great stuff.
um, what kind of video games do you typically compose for?
Oh, it's I've kind of been typecast in a weird way. So, and I think that was to do with me scoring a game called Equilinox.
Okay.
And I started that in 2016, I think, and it came out in 2018,
Hmm.
um, just as I was starting university. And since then, I've kind of been, and I'm not complaining because I love it. But I suppose I have been typecast, so lots of the things that come through are similar,
Hmm.
um, and that's basically um, stuff you could describe as like wholesome.
Hmm.
So nothing, no shooting, like blood, gore. It's like happy, calm, relaxing. Uh, Usually melody driven stuff. Um,
Hmm.
and I love it. And then it's weird because then you do like a horror film or something, which is like what I've been doing recently. Um, because again, like there's a weird balance between
Yeah.
the games I'm doing and the films. Um, but yeah, calm melody driven music mainly. And
Hmm.
but I would like to do try new things out in the game world, and do you know the Halos and the Call of Duties and stuff like that. I would love to
Yeah.
do that.
The
I
big
really would.
games.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
What would be your dream type of game or dream, like if you were to like have a franchise that you would like to compose for, or even just a type of game that you would like to compose for, what would be your dream one?
This changes a lot, but and it's also tough because everything that I would love to be on already is perfect. Like it,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to replace my
Hmm.
favorite composer on a project because then I don't get to hear what they do anymore. And I don't
Right.
think I wouldn't want to hear myself instead of them. But having said that, like a Halo game, I grew up playing Halo. Um, for some reason, that is right at the top of the list, even though it's technically not my favorite game. But I
Hmm.
love just the franchise as a whole and the lore behind it, and to know that I wrote music for a Halo game, like a mainline Halo game,
Yeah.
would be an absolute. Oh, it'd be amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I spoke to my friend about this the other day actually, and I think I said my answer then was still Halo, even though it changes all the time.
Yeah.
And he said, well, wouldn't it be better to have your own, to establish the music for your own franchise, be part of
Yeah.
something new? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That'd be even better if you wrote music for the next Halo or whatever, that would be fantastic.
Right. Yeah, the next Kingdom Hearts, the next Final Fantasy,
Final
whatever.
Fantasy, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah.
Thank you for dropping by to watch this video. If you want to continue this episode, head over to your favorite podcast platform right now and subscribe to the show. You can also finish watching this episode on the Composer Chronicles' Patreon page when you sign up at the $5 Rebellion tier or the $10 Wagnerian tier. All Patreon members also get early access to ad-free versions of the podcast, so head on over there for some great bonus content while supporting the Composer Chronicles. You can find the links to the podcast and the Patreon in the description below. Be sure to subscribe to the Alexandria Media YouTube channel for more videos like this one, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can find all information about this episode below in the description, and give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed watching. I look forward to seeing you over at the podcast or on the Patreon to finish up this episode.